Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Quality of Life grant from the Reeve Foundation to apply for a direct effect um, application for this cycle. My name is Maria, and I am a Grants Associate at the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, and I would like to welcome you today. If you need to turn on the closed captioning, there's an icon on the lower right. If you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A instead of the chat, and the QOL team is going to answer them as we go. I just want to let you know that from the QOL team, Dan McNeil, Director of QOL, is here, Parul Patel, she is the Associate Grant Officer, and Christopher Bontempo, Grants Coordinator. And we're going to be answering the questions to this presentation as we go along. Just want to let you know that the presentation and the slides are going to be available on our website. Sometimes might take a little time, so by next week, hopefully they're up on the website and you can review these and download them if you need them. I am going to turn off my camera and I'm going to share the slides with you. These are the topics that we're going to be discussing today. I want to tell you about the Reeve Foundation and the programs, the great programs that we offer. We're going to go over the main questions in the application. We're going to go over the budgets, which is usually the majority of the questions that we get, and the major questions, and give you some examples of the answers that to be provided in these areas. We're also going to have, time permitting, a Q&A at the end. If there's any questions that come up and need to be answered, we can discuss them at the end, and they will be also, if they're not answered during the presentation, as we go along. This grant program is part of the Paralysis Research Center and has been federally funded since 2014 through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Community Living, known as ACL. And the National Paralysis Center provides deeply needed information, programs, and support to individuals and assistance to over 5.3 million Americans that live with paralysis today. Our focus is on paralysis, so grant funding needs to support projects that directly benefit people living with paralysis, along with their families and their caregivers. We use functional definition of paralysis, meaning any difficulty or inability to use the arms or legs due to neurological conditions. This can include spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, stroke, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, ALS, post-polio syndrome, and other similar conditions. And we understand that some programs might also serve people with additional disabilities or be designed for inclusive community setting. However, the proposed projects should primarily serve individuals with paralysis, and it must benefit at least 5 individuals. The National Paralysis Research Center opened its doors to promote health, independence, and well-being. The Quality of Life program is part of the mission of today's care by funding projects whose goal is to benefit people living with paralysis. This includes information specialists, printed resources, advocacy and policy, regional champions, military and veteran support, peer support, and a yearly summit, which will take place in Boston this year in May. So please visit our website for information on the summit and all of these services that are mentioned here. The Reeve Foundation cannot award grants to individuals, but our team of information specialists can help you identify resources and information. And you can call us toll free at this the 1-800 number that is here. And you can or send us a question through it's a very simple online form. We now also have a chat feature available as well. So if you are looking for information or funding for an individual, this services are available.
I just
Again,
want, oop,
uh,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to say about just to clarify, for the five people, it's five people living with paralysis.
Yes. Okay. All of our resources are free to access and share, and this includes our flagship publication, the Paralysis Research Guide, which some of you might be familiar with. It's available in English and Spanish and additional languages. We have wallet cards. We have publications regarding secondary conditions like bladder and bowel management, pressure injuries, advocating for the rights of children living with paralysis. We have employment services. We have information on state fact sheets and other helpful resources as well. And again, this is available for you and your organization and the people that you serve. You do not have to be a grantee, or it's available to anyone who needs them, and you can order them directly through our website or contact an information specialist to have them sent at you at no cost. We also have a resource map where you can enter your zip code, and it'll bring up organizations in the area. We have some of our QOL grantees are listed there and their services, and this might be of assistance to you and to others. As I mentioned, the quality of life program that you're interested in applying is part of the the National Paralysis Research Center. And Dana Reeve believed deeply that while the search for a cure must continue, thousands of people living with paralysis deserve the support that improves their quality of life today. And that belief became the foundation of this program. And since 1999, it has awarded more than 50 million to support over 4,100 projects. Dana established the Reeve Foundation's Quality of Life initiatives, including the Paralysis Research Center and the Quality of Life program, to turn that vision into action. After Christopher Reeve was injured, Dana often spoke about feeling overwhelmed by information as she tried to navigate their new reality. And from that experience, she was driven to create a clear, compassionate framework of support for individuals living with paralysis, as well as their family and caregivers. Before we start, I want to mention, before we move on to the application, that there had been an eligibility requirement that I want to make sure that everyone understands. Previously, the waiting period for reapplying for funding after receiving a grant was 1 year from your grant closure. And with this agreement that was put in place in 2021, we're striving to create a level playing field and opportunities for the organizations applying for funding. So we have has been instituted a waiting period of 5 years, but that's only within the same category that you applied for before. Any other category or tier will still be a 1 year waiting period from your previous grant closure. For example, there are five funding available. We have 5 tiers of funding available twice a year. So if your organization receive a tier 1 adaptive sports, the past grant cycle, you must wait a year. After that grant is completed, you'll receive a notification from us after you have, if your reports have been submitted and they've been reviewed, then your grant has closed, and then you have to wait a year after you receive that notification. Your organization will be ineligible. You can't apply again for a tier 1 adaptive sports until after June 30th of 2026, but you can apply for other categories in the same tier or for other tiers of funding. If you have a question regarding our new building community capacity initiative, and you want to know if you're able to reapply, please email qol@reeve.org, and in the subject line write eligibility questions, and we can check and make sure that you're able to apply on this cycle. Before starting your application, please read the program lines. There's videos and instructions to further assist you in completing your application. Please note that this is a very competitive process and we want to give you all the tools to submit your application. All the links for the application tools are also in your applications, are in the guidelines to make it easier for you to be able to access them. For this cycle, this particular webinar is for direct effect. We are offering direct effect and expanded. Expanded, we had a webinar yesterday that's only for grantees, prior grantees. So for direct effect, the submissions are due March 12th. And just please know that you can submit only one application per cycle. Grant applications are completed through our online Reeve Foundation's grants portal, and you can find the link on that website and the grant application program. You can also use this link once the slides become available to go into the grants portal. We ask you that you add qolreeve.org and administrator@grantinterface.com to your acceptable email addresses to avoid having email communication from Reeve being blocked by any spam blocker. The emails from administrator@grantinterface.com, those are the emails that come from the grant portal, and those are the ones that you're going to get to notify you if your grant has been approved or it has been denied. And it also, if you've been approved, like the next process and the next steps, it's very important that that you have that email list approved. When you log into the grant portal, you will see this. I know some of you probably are familiar with this and have this information already, but if you already have if you already have an account, please do not duplicate. We want to make sure that all the application history is tied to the one organization. So if you're trying to create, you don't have the logins and you're trying to create an account and it tells you there's a duplicate, please let us know so we can give you the correct access to be able that there's no they're not duplicated and we miss some of the information because there's just two accounts with the same number. The detailed instructions appear on the right side of the screen on how to set up an account. And if you need if you need your credentials, just send us an email to qol@reeve.org and include your organization's EIN number. It makes it a lot easier and we can check also for duplicates that way. And this is a good time to go into your portal and to your dashboard and update your contact details and addresses. That's very important. And that please make sure that we have at least two contacts on your account because sometimes we have to, we have to contact you for different situations. We want to make sure that we have a way to get in touch. Confirm that your organization name is entered correctly in the portal. And this comes into place when, especially when we're issuing payments, we need the name that is in the grant portal, that the way that you started your organization, and the name that the grant payments are made, that they match. And what we do, and we do with every organization, we do a charity check to make sure that of course, the organization is in good standing, but we also have to match that name, that legal name that is in the charity check. So just make sure that the names are the same. Okay, so who is eligible to apply? Nonprofit organizations that have 501c3, municipal and state governments, school districts, colleges, universities, recognized tribal entities, and other institutions such as community health centers or veterans hospital. We cannot accept applications from a for-profit group, fiscal sponsors, somebody who does not have, somebody who's a fiscal sponsor applying on behalf of a 501(c)(3). We have seen this, we cannot accept those applications. If you're, again, like we have mentioned before, if you have a current or open grant with the Reeve Foundation, regardless of tier, regardless of project type, if you have an open grant or the 12-month waiting requirement has not been met, you cannot apply. And also, it's very important that you cannot apply it if you conduct business outside of the United States, or if you are using vendors outside of the United States. We cannot accept those applications. So again, for this tier that we're offering, it's tier 1, direct effect, and is open focused and awards our grants from 5,000 up to 24,999, and they support a wide range of projects and activities. Grant funds programs and projects that would clearly impact individuals living with paralysis and their families. So we're going to move into the application, and one of the first questions that we see are the project description. And what we want to see here, and this is an example of a good description, is we want you to provide a simple and short summary of the project, which outlines the why we need it, what activities you offering, and how the refunding support is going to be part of your project. We suggest that you keep it as simple as possible because other specific projects, the components like the timeline and the goals and the impacts, those are covered under other sections of the application. And we have an example, we provided an example here for you. So for, and this one would say that there's 20 people living with paralysis and they're registered users of the fitness and they need this machine and there's not a machine, this machine is not available within a 20-mile radius. So they're going to use this new equipment to provide services to individuals living with paralysis. And this fitness benefits and offers mental and physical benefits. So this is what we want to see here. Just, the equipment X will be installed at this facility, at this address, and this is a date that we're expecting the installation, and the refunding is going to support the purchase of this equipment. So when you're doing your project description, it's going to also ask you you're going to have to select a project type. And these are all of the project types. All of this is in the application, and you have to match the project type that best fits the project that you're trying to fund. As you can see, there's very different ones. If you have a question, you don't know exactly where your project fits, you can always ask us, but this is lists pretty much all the projects that we fund. It would take you then to the question of the project goals. And this is, we want to know what is it you want to achieve as a result of this project and what you will be doing to achieve them. And the example here, following the previous one, is that you want to increase access to fitness opportunities for people with paralysis by offering these training classes and this new equipment. And these classes are going to be held by certified professionals and who assist in participating the individual. So we want to know what the goal of this project is. The next section is going to ask you about the project timeline. And we really want to go over this because we want to make sure that the timeline includes 12 months without large time gaps. And also, it's important that you plan for the project because lately we have noticed sometimes the grantees will come back and ask for extensions or but we have realized that most of them come down to two things: timing and space. So either the funds weren't able to be spent within the grant period, or there wasn't enough room to properly place or store an adaptive equipment or supplies that were requested have not arrived. So we want to take a moment to offer a little extra guidance to help avoid those situations moving forward. So especially for universities and colleges and school, this is very especially important. We know that academic calendars don't always line up neatly with our grant timeline. So when you're applying, just make sure that your project timeline, your spending plan, and the final evaluation all align with the grant completion timeline in like for schools rather than a semester or school year or schedule. And we also want to highlight planning around equipment and supplies, and that before you submit your request, it is really important to know the dimension of the equipment. Is the equipment going to be available? Where is it going to be placed? How much space it requires? Do you have a place to store it? Are you the staff that you need? Do you have the staff in place that is going to run some of these programs? Well, that's very important that we think through those details ahead of time to prevent delays once the grant is awarded. And finally, when I mentioned that going forward, extensions won't be approved if these guidelines aren't followed. So you have to remember that this update helps us stay consistent and fair across to all the grantees, while also making sure that the funds are being used as intended and as requested and on time. Then we come to the area where we report the numbers of individuals living with paralysis that's going to be served. And we know that this number can be challenging, especially for larger spaces like parks or gym. What is important to remember is that this number should reflect the people living with paralysis who will be directly served by this project during the 12-month project timeline. We encourage you to be realistic. A very large number isn't helpful if it isn't accurate. So if your project is awarded, these are the numbers that you're going to be reporting both in your interim and final report. So it's important that they are achievable and well thought out. So for example, if you are, let's say, a YMCA or a gym, it isn't about the total number who go and use the gym, or maybe the number of people that are expected to visit a park, but it's about the number of people living with paralysis who will benefit directly from this specific project for those 12 months. Then we come to our favorite part of the budgets. And for this slide, we're going to also spend a little time talking about budget because sometimes in this area, um, we want to make sure that the budgets are submitted correctly. And first, the budget template and the narrative should be completed for a 12-month project timeline in mind. Use the Excel file with the application only. If you maybe have applied in the past and there's an older version of the Excel file, please just make sure that you use the one that is attached to the application, to this latest application for this cycle. And everything in your budget should match realistically to the plan that you want to do within that 1 year period. So your funding request should clearly connect the dots between your project goals, the activities you're planning, and the timeline for those activities, and all the costs that is associated with them. In other words, we should be able to look at your budget and easily understand how each expense is going to support the approved project scope. It
So,
is also
Maria,
important.
one quick question. I just want to mention that the budget has two parts. One is the Excel file, and the other word is a narrative in the Word document. The Excel file has two columns: total project costs versus the amount requested from the Reeve Foundation. So you can have a project that's in excess of 100,000. You need to itemize all of those related costs under total cost column. Then you come over to the next column. Of the 100,000, in which line items are you requesting funds from the Reeve Foundation? And then to tie it back to the narrative, you don't have to include the total cost necessarily in the narrative, but explain what you are requesting from the Reeve Foundation. If it's 24,999 for two pieces of equipment, then we would see that in the narrative. So everything has to tick and tie. Underneath the Excel file, you will see a budget gap section. All the formulas are inputted. What we do ask is that you explain the gap. So if your project is 100,000, you're requesting 25,000. So we're looking for an explanation as to the balance, the 75,000 remaining. Where are those funding? Where is that funding coming from? Has that funding been committed? If so, how much? And then we itemize whether it's foundation, corporations, and so on and so forth in that. So I just wanted to make sure. This tends to be the number one pain point when we assess these applications. Another thing I've noticed is the application says we're requesting 20,000. The attached budget documents mention 15,000. So, there's a lot of downtime. And sometimes when the competitive nature of these grants make it, very, very difficult for us to manage these things. And that means there's a lot of downtime. So we have to reach back out to the grantees, wait for a response. By that time, someone already responds and their application moves to the top. So it behooves you to make sure that everything is connected before you actually submit the application. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out through QOL, and we'll be able to help you take care of that before you actually submit the application. Thank you.
Also, when you work with the Excel file, you'll see, the columns, the total project cost. You see the column for the amount that is requested. You'll see the different budget classifications in the different sections, and there's a lot of explanation within the Excel spreadsheet as well. So that should be also helpful when completing the project. It's also important that all the request funds align with approved budget and identify line items. If an expense is not included in the original project scope, it won't be eligible for funding later on. So you can't later on say, oh, well, I don't want to fund this line, I want to fund this. So we're going to fund what's in that budget, in that approved budget. And we also want to clarify that reallocation of awarded funds will be considered until the project has been underway for at least 3 months. And this helps us ensure that any reallocation requests are based on real project experience and actual spending, not any early planning gaps. So again, if you have any questions about planning requirements, allowable costs, and how to build, we strongly encourage you to reach out to the foundation staff before submitting a funding request. We are always happy to clarify things up front and make sure that the budget is correct. So when filling out your budget to determine what we can fund and what we cannot fund, we cannot fund any money given to individuals, for example, directly to a family to pay for respite care, or sometimes we have projects that require they're paying travel for families. You can't directly pay a participant and not the company who provided the service. Like t-shirts or uniforms. We cannot fund any type of research. We cannot fund rehabilitative therapy. However, if there are programs that assist people living with paralysis to participate in exercise opportunity, that is allowable. Programs that use physical or occupational therapists to work directly with persons with paralysis are considered part of rehabilitative therapy and it cannot be funded. But if it's exercise opportunities are facilitated by someone who, for example, has a bachelor degree in exercise and is certified fitness instructor, that is allowable. So, and so when it comes also to, if you have a program, for example, a field trip day or camp, just make sure that personal items like water or meals or snacks are not included in the cost per person to to complete that program that you're asking for funding. When it comes to equipment, keep in mind that funding for repairs, insurance, or inspections of existing equipment is not allowable. Our grants are intended to support new purchases and significant upgrades, not the maintenance of items and that the organization already owns. Maintenance costs might be eligible only when they're tied to a newly purchased equipment or approved modifications. For loan closets, requests must include a clearly defined loan period. The typical loans are 4 to 6 weeks and sometimes up to 3 months. Open-ended long-term closets, including ramps, would not be considered. And in general, the equipment might be funded if it provides access or promotes independence. In items like transfer chairs, community pools, accessible exam tables in rural areas, adaptive strollers, accessible scales, beach wheelchairs, adaptive bikes at community parks. These are all could be funded. And then some equipment might also be allowable under nursing home transition grant program, but make sure that review the program's specific guidelines for this tier. The next one is when it comes to construction. This slide covers what is allowable when it comes to construction and capital improvements. First, we do not fund the construction of new buildings or major construction projects. However, simple accessibility modification to existing structures like buildings or playgrounds or trails might be allowable. For example, if we're funding for accessible bathroom modification, that is allowed as long as the bathroom already exists. And you can put things like grab bars or accessible toilets or sinks. What we can't fund is the construction of a brand new bathroom or a major renovation of an existing one. Similarly, if you're requesting what we see often is a lift or an elevator, the equipment itself might be allowable under items that provide access. However, we cannot fund like the excavation or the construction related to an elevator or a shaft, as that will fall under major construction. We also want to note that capital improvements or long-term purchases are not allowable for leased or rented properties. This helps ensure that the grant funds directly and benefits the grantee organization and its clients, and that we apply this guideline consistent and fairly. And finally, we do not fund the construction of new playgrounds. We can support modifications to existing non-accessible playgrounds or parks. This includes repairing older non-accessible equipment or ground covering. Minor relocation of playgrounds is also allowable as long as the playground already exists. There is a question, and you need to determine the number of people living with this disability in your area. There are some websites here that can assist you to do that. Again, this will be available in the slides when they're available on that website, but you can use this. There are online tools that let you view and down disability data for the counties and for the address that your organization serves. The next question is going to ask you about your evaluation. Basically, we always say, if you propose it, we'll measure it, and they provide specific measures that you're going to use. Surveys, for example. There's a link to establish evaluation indicators. There's more information on the website. And again, it's also on the application. There's a link to help you evaluate your program, and you will need to identify the approach that you next to use and how will you measure the benefits of the project. For example, in the following what we were talking about before, the final report can say that the fitness class was offered to 20 people with paralysis, and of these 20, 16 completed and participated in the survey, and this is what they said about the program. So going back to the budget, as we had mentioned before, the budget is going to it's going to ask you about the amount that is requested. Again, it's a minimum of 5,000 and a maximum of 24,999. Enter the amount that you're going to call that you're requesting. I enter the amount of the budget of the total proposed budget amount. Download the Excel form and download the budget narrative, complete it, and upload it back to the form. We've also, like I mentioned, we have revised the project template, and all applications using the older versions of the budget templates cannot be submitted. So again, this is you have your narrative and you have your budget, and they both should match the expenses for the program that you're trying to complete. When you are completing your budget, just make sure that you um, the numbers used in the budget template match the vendor quotes. If you have an extensive list of supplies, you can just list the expenses in our budget as a one line and then include a separate addendum with these items. Sometimes we see certain programs require 20, 30 different things. So you don't have to list them in the Excel spreadsheet, just provide a separate list and attach it to that, itemizing what you're using. Always remember to list your supplies minus any discounts or taxes, and list also with the shipping costs. Keep the organization's personnel and consultants separate. If they're not employees of the organization, just put them down as consultant. And like I mentioned before, the t-shirts and the food and are considered gifts and are not allowed. And complete the gap funding information. There's a formula at the bottom of the page, and it should all, come together there. Make sure that the budget narrative is in the, the budget narrative, the top looks like this. Make sure that you put the name of the organization, make sure that it matches the application, the name of the project matches your application, and all these lines, the amount requested and the budget, it all matches together and it's the same. So we talked about the things that cannot be funded, but we do have a list of things that can. So let's see, it's just one sec. There's a wide range of the ones your programs and services, personnel, entry fees, transportation costs, facility rental, travel reimbursements. Please follow these are the federal established guidelines for these expenses, for the airfares and mileage, equipment and supplies are all allowable expenses. Again, there's different sections in the Excel spreadsheet for this, and just follow the instructions that are there. When it comes to the indirect cost, the indirect cost is a rate of no more than 15%. If your organization has you're allowed a different rate, we need for you to include your NICRA statement with your applications. Remember that the indirect costs are based on the amount that you're requesting, not the total project cost. We see that happening a lot. For vendor quotes, I require for purchases over 10,000 and must be valid within the 3 months of submitting the application. I know, and make sure that that it matches what you have listed on your budget. And in this question is, what is your budget strategy? If it's not funded by Reeve, we want to just know if for some reason you're not funded, or if you're waiting for other additional funds, what happens if the Reeve Foundation is not able to support this project? If you have any additional or supporting materials, you can include them here. For the mission statement, this is the part where you should list who you are and what you do and how you do it. This is the reason that your organization is in place, and that's what we want to see here. So you have the very important, submit your application if you want to do that. And if you need to work on it, just, save the application, you can go back to it. There's also a feature on the top of the application if you're collaborating with someone else from your organization. You can select that button and give access to someone else who's working in the application for you. And once you submit your application, you will get a notification from Foundant that your application has been submitted. All applicants are going to be notified by email if the application has been approved or declined. If your project is awarded, you'll be asked to indicate your acceptance of the grant. This form again comes from Foundant, and you'll receive an intent to accept, where you accept or decline the award, and you provide us the contact information for the grant agreement and who is the person who is going to be responsible for the payment information. Once the intent to accept has been received, a grant agreement is going to be issued. The grant agreement has to be reviewed and countersigned. Usually you'll receive an email letting you know that the grant agreement is available on your dashboard. You download the agreement and get the necessary signatures, and there's a follow-up and you upload the grant agreement again. We also, if awarded, we provide you with a press release template to help publicize the grant. And we regularly, feature our grantees on social media, or on the website, and newsletters and other publications. Someone might call you to provide stories and photographs that we can share with that community. I just want to let you know, if you want to go and see past grantees and what their projects were about, you can go to our website, and we have a list of past grantees divided in different tiers and different cycles. So you can also see that as well and get an idea of of the projects that have been funded. In addition, like I mentioned at the beginning, we encourage you to utilize all of the free resources that are part of the National Paralysis Resource Center. Once after you are awarded, we are going to, there are follow-ups that, as part of the grant agreement, you agree to submit. And there's an interim, for direct effect, there's an interim report that you complete after 6 months. And that is also going to be available on your dashboard, and also the Excel file to report your expenses. And the final report is due 1 month after the close of the grant, and it will detail the project progresses, the challenges, and how they were addressed and the impact. And that's why it's very important when you, as I mentioned before, when you list your goals and how you're going to measure and how many people you're going to serve, the way that the reports work is that, that information is brought in again, and you have to let us know based on what you said, what you're going to do, what happened during the project. We cannot provide specific details of why a grant was declined. We can discuss the guidelines that need to be followed. We we don't give feedback or direction. We want to be fair to all of the applicants. There's a statement of objectivity regarding the grant decisions that is on our website that you can review. But if you have a question on a guideline in terms of, can this be, is this an expense that can be funded? Or if you have a question, just, please let us know. We also ask you that there's going to be a survey about the webinar and the application process. We really appreciate your feedback. It's an important tool that helps us improve the QL program. We want to just just, be aware of whatever feedback you want to provide for us, and we really appreciate it. And I hope that this was helpful. I want to thank you so much for attending. We look forward to reviewing your applications. And to remember again, it's March 12th. It's the deadline to submit. I don't know if there's any questions that the rest of the team wants to answer or hasn't been answered.
I see one here from an applicant. It's regarding caregiver and what that looks like. I would rather respond to your question through an email. So if you can please submit your question through that.
I also want to say, I know that there were some questions that were submitted for the registration when participants, when you registered. We're gonna answer you directly via, your email address, and we'll address those questions as well through email. So if we don't have any more questions, I want to thank you so much. And again, we're here to assist you and to help you submit the best application. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send us, to contact us via qol@reeve.org. Thank you so much. Bye.